Hello there, and thanks for joining me for this live stream. I'm Aaron Rutten, and it is my mission to help artists like you enjoy digital art and learn some new skills along the way. So today we're going to be doing some painting in Corel Painter 2020. I'll go ahead and dive right into this. So I have a photograph that I took here in Washington, and I'm going to use that as the foundation of my painting. And I'm going to improvise a bit on that, though, by creating a color scheme that's not quite what you see in the painting. So I have I'll go ahead and make this bigger. I have my reference image here. I'll just have that on another monitor. And then I have a little mini version here so you can follow along with me. Gurkana's here, Maz is here, good to see you. Thanks for watching. So one thing I want to do is create a color gamut mask. So I can do that here in my color gamut masking tool. So if we plot out kind of where we have colors here with a little guide, we know we're going to want some yellow, but it's kind of an orangey yellow. But nevertheless, we do want probably some bright yellow in there. So let's go ahead and say that we're probably going to want that color there. And then we know we're going to want to have some blue for the sky. It's pretty bright blue. There is a little bit of cyan as it starts to fade into that yellow. So we'll want to make sure we capture some of that. So let's go ahead and say our blue is going to be like maybe here, and we'll figure out how saturated we want it to be. Christian's here. Good to see you, Christian. And then there's going to be some brownish colors. There's going to be some greenish colors, but those greens are going to be pretty desaturated. So as long as we capture something in there, we ought to be pretty good. It's a little bit of reddish color and some purple. So I think we could probably get away with going maybe... trying to decide which colors I want to include here. We do know we want there to be some indigo. And those reddish colors could get away with being over on the reddish side. So we have something kind of like that, but we don't necessarily want to have four corners here. We could. So we want to try to just think about what kind of shapes we can get if we do something triangular like that, or if we do something like that. I think what we'll do is we will swing over into here a little bit. Maybe we'll go for something like that, and then at least we have some options to get a few of those blues and some of the reds. So in the gamut masks grouping of layers, we can go to our mask. We can use our polygonal lasso tool here to poke a hole in that mask. Now we know that we want that color to be pretty bright for that. So let's go ahead and do something like that. And if I just fill that mask with black, hide that little sketch layer that I made, then I have my color gamut. Let's crop off the excess here. Sludgy's here from Spain. Good to see you, Sludgy. So those are the colors that we'll use in this piece. Now, it doesn't have to match the photo exactly. I want to have the option of being pretty close to that, but I also want to be able to augment reality a bit. Although it is a pretty surreal painting and it is pretty heavily saturated already, so. Flying Penguin's here. Good to see you, Flying Penguin. So I want to save this. It's going to save it with my artwork. Can then close that, and I can load it. All right, so there we go. So let's go ahead, and I like to start by filling the sky. So we know the sky is going to be kind of like a bluish color like this. And of course we can add to that. Now I want to decide where the horizon is going to be. So that layer I'll just call C because that's going to be the distant water. And then I'll use the rectangular selection tool for that. And composition wise, I know that when I cropped this down, I had the horizon was right about here, somewhere in this area. And then color wise, that can be maybe more on the greenish side for now. I'm not going to worry too much about getting the exact color that I want. I just want to block these layers in. And then I want to have some land. Or let's be more specific. We'll call that the beach. How's the audio, by the way? I got a mixer, like a hardware mixer, because the headset mic just wasn't cutting it. Sammy wants to know where they can get an African landscape reference. A good way to get references is to do an image search and then sort your image search by labeled for reuse, because there's lots of Creative Commons images. As long as you give attribution to the photographer, you can use it, but they have different licenses. There's some things that are royalty free. Flickr, for example, or any kind of image sharing website where the average person might go on vacation and shoot a bunch of pictures in Africa. You can find some pretty good stuff that way that's Creative Commons. Praveen says the audio is fine. Good. Because it was driving me crazy trying to deal with that headset microphone, because you have to have it perfectly positioned, and then you try to take a drink of water and you dip it in your drink and whatnot. So I spent pretty much all of yesterday setting up this mixer, and I'm not really much of an audio guy, so it's it was a little bit of a learning curve involved there, but I'm much happier with the results. So we want to put in that beach now. And I think what I'll do for that is, for now, I'll just kind of block it in with something. But later I'll probably go over it again. So that's going to go kind of at an angle like that. And I'm just making a selection. And then I want to get a brownish color. Let's say like one of these. And again, I'm not worrying about the value being perfect here. I'm habitually trying to avoid the headset microphone. So if you see me doing weird things, like I go to take a drink and I'm like, I try to drink with the side of my mouth so I don't hit my microphone. That's why I'm doing that. It's going to take some getting used to. Gargana says it would be nice if you would do more live art. Watching me doing art is their pleasure. Thank you, Gargana. I will certainly try to do more live streams. I've been steadily investing time and money into making my live streaming more robust and up to date. you'll notice, like, I mean, in addition to the mixer that I got, just to improve the sound quality, I've also improved the lighting. So I've got all that set up and automated, and it ties in to my Streamloots cards. And then you can, whenever somebody triggers a card, it can change colors and do different things. I could even, if I didn't want to have purple lights in the background, I could make them whatever color I want. And so just trying to up the overall quality and value of the live streams, in addition to doing more. Okay, so we got the beach blocked in, and then behind the beach, there is kind of a few different layers, a few different planes of little peninsulas, or perhaps even islands. So those in the layer order would be behind the sea. So I'll just call this land close, I guess, is a good name for it. And composition-wise, that is not quite center. And it kind of comes up and just doing little zigzaggy kind of strokes. Let's see here. I want to do one thing so I can change my camera the way I want it. You think you got everything set up the way you want it, and then you don't. Okay, so I want to be able to show you this. This is important. So what I'm doing is kind of a zigzaggy. I'm exaggerating it here, just so you can see the motion that I'm doing. Because I don't want to have every single tree be noticeable. I just want to have it be a little bit lumpy. Like that. So many cameras to switch here. So then we want to fill that with a color. And that color is going to be kind of a blue-gray color. I want to just clear out these swatches too. So that blue-gray color we can get from maybe here. I'll try that for now. Might make it a bit lighter. And again, just composing as I go along here. Vaughn's here from Romania, and they like that they can learn from my professional illustration. Thank you, Vaughn. So let's see, behind that we have land mid. So if it helps, you might want to zoom in here. This is kind of a finer detail. I'm working slightly larger than I usually do during live streams, which is, it's a little bit risky because as I'm live streaming, I'm also taxing my computer. Zooming in also helps you to do those same gestures, but have the elements that you're creating or the little zigzags be finer. So then it'll look more distant, because if you have the same, the same size of trees essentially here, but the plane is farther away, it's not going to look right. So now we want to fill that with that basically the same color, but lighter and less saturated. And the amount of contrast that you use here is going to determine how far away it is. So let's try something like that. And we'll do might do one more layer. I mislabeled that. Nah. Let's go with that. In my reference photo, I think there might be 3 different layers, but what we'll do is we'll have one kind of, it'll be 2 different planes, but they're so close together that I'll have a little bit of a gap there. Okay, we know we're going to have some clouds. But those, I think I prefer to paint in by hand, so I'll account for the layer there. But let's be more specific because there's going to be 2 different kinds of clouds. We'll have some clouds that are far and clouds that are near. And then on that beach, we don't have to have a layer for everything because there's so many different things going on. But looking at the image from far away helps because we can see essentially there's a layer of grass that we need to account for. And then on top of that, there is some debris. You could say that that's just debris and you could do it all on one layer. You could separate the driftwood from the signs. You could exclude the signs altogether and just have driftwood. And then there's little rocks and things, but the rocks you don't see too many of, and they're kind of implied in the foreground. So let's say rocks and logs, because driftwood is it's a lot to type out. So you can make your layer labels short, or at least short enough to be recognizable, and you don't have to get too detailed with them. But if you want to write out long descriptions, that's cool too. Whatever helps you. Martina says, how many years have I been doing art? I've been doing art for nearly my entire life, but professionally, since I was in my 20s, kind of mid 20s, and I'm in my late 30s now. So you could say, like, I guess, I don't know, 15 years professionally, whatever the math is there. Richard's here. Good to see you, Richard. How you doing today? On grandpa duty again today, or hanging out and doing some painting? Okay, so the logs I'm going to paint in by hand because those are kind of more spontaneous. As for the grass and the rocks, I think that's better because it's so amorphous that it doesn't really have an easy silhouette to just put in compared to the very clear division between the beach and the water and then the stuff that's on the horizon here. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And then it's easy enough to start with the sky. A good reason to start with the sky too is because then you have a good idea of what your lighting is. Richard's hanging out. Sweet. And I'm sure Richard knows this, but feel free to follow along if you want to paint along with me. You can, of course, download the free trial of Corel Painter. And I have a workspace available on my Patreon. And in that workspace, you can basically configure your Corel Painter interface to look like mine with all the brushes, and makes it super easy to follow along. So I'm going to use the digital airbrush here with a pretty big airbrush. And at the top of the sky, I know I'm going to want some bluish tone, so I'm going to select that. I might go more into the indigo. So hue-wise, that's at 0. Saturation, it's at 60, so I want to remember those numbers, but I want to kind of make note of where my value is already here. And I think that's at a pretty good place. So I want to make sure that I'm darker than that. with my color. I'll kind of fade the sky down like that to create a vignette. Trying to arrange things on my other screen so I can see more stuff at the same time. You know, you'd think at some point you'd have enough screens, but you really can't have enough screens. There we go. So we got that vignette up at the top. Now, I could have been a little bit more subtle about that because it's not quite as indigo and it's not as dark, but I want it to be more dramatic, so I'm enhancing what's going on here, and it adds some color flavor into the sky that's not present. And then what we have is kind of a fogginess almost of a yellowish color. So let's say we'll go with this. We'll just put it in and we'll see how it looks. So I want to leave a bit of a gap between that indigo color and the cyan that's already there. And I think that I do want to go a bit brighter. It ends up creating an almost greenish color, which is all right in that transition. And I think I might even want to go into the orange and have the top end of that just have a little hint of orange. Now, all I'm really doing here is just looking at the reference photo, seeing what colors are there, and then tweaking that, using my artistic license and deciding which colors I want to use. And I don't always exactly know what I'm going to do. I mean, as I'm doing it here, I didn't practice this ahead of time. I'm just going to improvise. So down near the horizon, we definitely want some of that orangish color. So we can kind of imply it, but we'll bring it out a bit more as we get into the sky. And then we're going to want some of that bright yellow. Our sun's going to be right around here somewhere, so we'll just put in some of that. Just have everything kind of fade up. And if you accidentally paint over something that you liked, you can always bring it back in. We just want kind of a blend of colors in there. A little more orange over here. So this is all just kind of distant stuff, distant cloudy stuff. Go back to that yellow and just have a little bit more brightness here. Might even help to put in the sun as its own layer. You can't really see it directly, but there's a little spot where it's peeking through. So we could just kind of imply it for now. I'm going to use an almost white yellow color for that. And it's going to be right around here, but we may end up moving it. It's just kind of peeking through the clouds a bit. Now if I go back to that sky, which is just on the canvas layer, now it might be easier to kind of center things around that area and have it blend out evenly. Okay, It's going to make more sense when we have the layers of clouds on top of it. Right now it looks like some sort of UFO. Feel free to comment in and let me know if you believe in UFOs. It's just a good random question to ask that I think people are probably pretty split on. And by UFOs, I don't mean like somebody couldn't explain something they saw and it might have turned out to be something of this world, but I'm talking about UFOs that are not of this world. So let's do something on top of the sun, the clouds far, so we want to at least block those in. So let's try a bluish color like that. Now, we know we want it to be lighter in value than our foreground land. So let's go just, yeah, actually that'll work. Now the whole thing's not going to be this bluish color. It's actually going to alternate between different colors here, but I'll just put it in like this for now. And then if I turn on preserve transparency, then I can get some blends of other colors. Gets a little bit gray there too in that transition. Just checking the chat here. Just making sure things are still running smoothly. So let's do a little bit more of this glowing going on here. Okay, that'll work for now. Now to that sea layer. Now we kind of want to reflect some of what's going on into the sea. So the sky, for example, can have some of that. So I'm just kind of sampling the colors that are surrounding all this stuff here. Some warm colors and put some of those in where the sun is. All right, maybe even a little bit of kind of a pinkish color. little bit of yellow. There we go. And a lot of this stuff, you just kind of do it by eye. So now I'm going to go to that land mid layer. I'm going to bring that in to be a bit closer to the color that we have for the water there. I think maybe what I'll do is on the sea layer, I'm going to create some contrast so that we can actually see. So we can see on the sea that background layer. It's going to be pretty subtle in the background. There we go. You just have to kind of play with colors to see what works to make it show up against the ocean and the cloud that's behind it. And those clouds in the distance, you can also kind of separate those with the airbrush against that land like that. There we go. Do a save as and save my progress. Are we working in 8-bit or 16-bit mode in Painter? I believe in Painter it's 8-bit. Photoshop offers more bits, but I don't know that Painter does. So now let's do some land, or no, the beach. So that should be quite a bit darker than the water. And right now it's 119 and the water is right around the same value. So it needs to be darker than that. So it's nice just to be able to hunt for the color here and just make adjustments with this slider. I'm going to do it a little less saturated too, and it does have some other colors going on in addition to the brownish color. Sometimes if you blur your eyes too, it helps you see the difference between the contrast. I'm going to resist doing it too dark. Maybe go somewhere in between what I want to do and what I actually feel like it should be. So let's go right there. So in regards to the color bit depth, it's probably not going to make too much of a difference in terms of painting, but if you wanted to, let's say, add effects, like you wanted to do a hue saturation to change the hue and saturation and everything, you'd have more headroom if you had more bits of information. So that effect would probably look less blown out. You know, like in my reference image here, I shot this on my phone and it's not the best quality photo. I mean, color-wise, it looks, you know, better than it would if I just had natural lighting, but the colors are a little bit blown out. It's oversaturated and it degrades the image. So had I shot this on like a real photography camera rather than my phone, and if that photography camera supported a higher resolution that it could capture, and then I edited it in Photoshop in that higher resolution or higher bit depth, and I applied a saturation filter or some other sort of filter, the result I get would probably be a lot cleaner and less over-processed looking than if I used 8-bit mode with a not very good camera. So there's probably ways that would benefit artwork in digital painting, but usually people aren't really, really overdoing it with effects. There's also the aspect of bit depth in that it increases the file size. I'm not sure what the proportion is in terms of art, but I know when you're working with audio, there's bit depth in audio too. And if you use a higher bit depth, then your files are bigger. But it's the same principle. You have more headroom for your audio. So if you did something like applied an effect to your voice, that effect might sound less distorted or cleaner because you have more resolution within the waveform itself. So I'm going to save this base color here as a swatch. Jester Lee, thanks for the follow. And then I'm going to get some different hues to put in here, like maybe this more bluish one. But I want to make sure that value-wise it's still that same value. So go ahead and just move my hue to 0 since I know that's what it is. And I'm cooling this off, but I'm not really adding value. It's weird, I see a box here. I don't know if you can see that. You probably can't, but for some reason there's a visual artifact that's showing me a square shape at that specific zoom level. Weird. Maybe it means Painter's going to crash. So I do want to add a little bit of value. And maybe here I'll just reflect some of the sky. It can be a bit brighter so that it does stand out as being sky reflected onto the land. I'm going to sample that base color and then lighten it a bit. Maybe saturate it a bit more. Make sure the hue is over in the yellowish orangish area. Maybe go a bit brighter, a bit more saturated. There's a few yellowish spots that kind of stick out to me. They need more saturation too. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, one of the things you can do during this live stream is influence the content that I'm creating. That might be how I create this painting or the colors in the painting. And you can do that by getting Streamloots cards. There's a link for that in the chat. And what you do is you get chests, and then within that chest, you just get random cards. Like if you opened a pack of baseball cards or something, or playing cards or Pokemon cards, what have you, you would get random cards. You never know what you're going to get. But you can kind of get an idea of the different cards that I offer. Some of them are for drawing requests and custom brushes and even some just kind of fun stuff, silly stuff. So definitely check those out if you want to interact with this stream. It's one of the cool things about being able to live stream. If you're on YouTube, you can also request drawings via Super Chat. There's a description of how to do that in the video description on YouTube. So let's put in some of that grass now. That's as easy as really just kind of airbrushing in some stuff. So we got some greens to choose from, but I don't want them to be too saturated. Yeah, even that's too saturated. Something like that's better. And then value-wise, again, I want to not have it clash too much with the dirt that's underneath. So 148, 56, 111 is what I have. So I had 111, so let's try doing it somewhere around there. Trying to get the value pretty close to what it is so that I don't have grass that appears too dark or too light. If I wanted to, I could make that more yellow and just kind of vary it back and forth. And then to get a feel of kind of where we're going, I'll create a new layer. I'll set the composite method or the blend mode to color. I'll select black and I'll fill that layer with black. That gives us kind of a pseudo black and white effect. Now I can see the greenish color that I did add is lighter in value. That's okay, I want it to stand out. I think it looks okay the way it does. One thing I see that I didn't account for is brush or grass, but let's call it brush. There's these brownish, brushy things that I'll need to put in too. So that detail stuff I'll probably do kind of more toward the end. We're gonna have some rocks and stuff, but I think I'm gonna save those. So now we can go in and start adding more of the details. I'm gonna have some logs. So there's one that's kind of right here, going at an angle, and there's another one going at an angle that's more like that. They're pretty flat on the bottom because they're sunken into the sand. And then there's some that separate the beach itself from the water. So there's, I guess, kind of a hill that kind of goes down. So then in that case, you know, you wouldn't see a smooth transition all the way to the beach. You wouldn't see the water overlapping unless for some reason the slope was a bit smoother here. So because of that, we might end up having a bunch of logs just lining that. And they might all run together in some places too, so, you know, don't have like a fence like that unless that's what you want. Maybe some kids came over and set it up that way. Getting too wild with that. Let's have it be a bit more subtle. So maybe down here in this area, this is maybe where you can go all the way down and see the water. So like over here, the slope is like that, but over here it's like that. So if you're trying to look down, that's your angle of view, right? So that helps it look more dynamic and less, you know, just like a straight line going all the way across. Not all the logs have to be parallel. Some can be kind of perpendicular, that's okay. Now I could separate these onto different layers. I could have background logs and foreground logs. And I might do that. You know what? I might do that. I'm gonna do that. So I'm just gonna cut and paste those logs. These are logs foreground. Because the ones that are in the background, it's not going to make sense to really try to treat them individually because there might be a lot of logs, so I want to imply a bunch of logs. In a way, this is similar to plein air painting in that I know I have a limited amount of time to capture this scene. So makes it kind of fun. So I have to be able to decide what details I can afford to put in and which ones I can't. So we need a few more foreground logs. Keep using that color. This one that goes right there like that. There's a few like that. Okay, just kind of taking a mental break there for a minute. Sometimes you need to do that to be able to think about what you're going to do next. Now I think I feel like getting away from the logs pretty soon here. So I'm going to go to the clouds in your layer and we'll put those in. These are a bit fluffier. So let's use an oily brush. Use oily clouds. I want to get these as bright and as pink as I can without it being the wrong color. Oh yeah, that's a nice color. Let's see what we can get away with if we get that little piece of red there. Yeah, that's the color we want. Now, because I'm using a pretty high resolution canvas, or higher than usual, and I'm live streaming, I'm only going to be able to make my brush so big before it starts to get a little bit laggy, so I'm going to have to be a little bit careful about what I do here, brush size wise. This gives me some nice oily clouds. Actually, I'm gonna just do the pink ones first. We have some that are so subtle that you barely see them too, so don't overdo those. I'm gonna save that color. And then the color that I want is probably going to be something closer to this. less saturated. So kind of a bluish gray color. And where they're not catching as much light, then they start to get a bit darker. But not on that one. We'll leave that one the way it is. Some little subtle ones kind of floating on the horizon here. Now, if you decided that you don't like these, you don't have to put in everything that's in your reference photo. In fact, it looks kind of messy in the reference photo. So maybe I'll keep them, maybe I won't. Just made that peachy color just a bit darker. Okay, and then I may as well just add that as a color. But you could make color strings if you want to as well. So you could have all of your colors in their light and dark values. But, I don't want to spend too much time doing setup stuff. And I don't want to exclude too much of the process. So that's why I don't really mess with it here during the live streams. But for some paintings, I might do that. I might go in and do strings of color. So just kind of highlighting the edges on some of those. Now I like those pink clouds, but if I wanted to, I could have, of course, used other colors. I could have gone, more into the magenta. But I like the way that looks. So now let's go ahead and do another layer of clouds. These are the clouds that are in the foreground, and they're kind of coming in front. Like that. So these are lower lying clouds, kind of foggy stuff. And they're catching some of that color from the sunset there. They're mostly kind of a grayish color. And they're actually not too bright, so be careful about how bright I try to make them. Okay. A lot of this stuff is just kind of jumbled up, and it's hard to pick out what's what. So just kind of put it in, and no one's really going to look at this and know exactly what that cloud looked like on that day. nor does it really matter. You don't have to show anyone your reference photo. Just show them the painting and they'll go, great, looks like clouds. Put the reference photo next to it, then you're opening yourself up to some trouble. People will say, that doesn't look like the reference photo. Well, it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be art. So I'm just going to kind of keep chiseling away at this here. So one of the things that I've done in setting up my audio is I've made an easy on-off button for some background music. So we'll try that for a minute here while I do some more painting. So on the bottom of that land close, I'm gonna add a little bit of detail to that. All it really is just kind of a silhouette. So I can get one of those lighter colors from the sky. Richard likes it. Richard's rocking out now. Yeah, the music thing is kind of like 50-50. Some people like it and some people don't. And I think it's just music is so subjective that not everybody agrees on what they want to listen to. I like to listen to music while I paint. So I'm just adding a little bit of warmth or that kind of pinkish color there because the light's going to spill over that area. So now I think it's going to be time to start merging down some stuff. Let me know about the level of music too. Like if it's really hard to hear what I'm saying, I can always adjust the level. So let's do that. Let's save real quick. Then I'll do a save as and save a copy. And the clouds far, and the sun. Well, actually I want to keep the sun separate. The clouds far I will merge down. And I'm going to use that oily clouds brush again. So I want to make sure to leave some of a gap here where that sun is peeking out. So basically just don't paint over that. You could always move it later if you do. It's not the end of the world. And again, I'm just trying to get the impression of what's going on here. I'm not gonna like zoom in and stress out on every single shape of the cloud in my reference photo. Now, nearer the sun, we have some little bits that aren't too distinct. So kind of a light brown color might work and read more as orange. Or we might want to add more saturation than that. So let's see how much saturation we can get away with. Doesn't hurt to try out the color. That's what we want, some stuff like that. I'm gonna save that color too. So there's kind of this gradient that goes from like light yellow to yellow orange to kind of a peach color, and then eventually to blue. And you want that to kind of emanate from that light source in that order. Try some of that yellow too. Kind of poke through with that. It'll create a nice glowing effect. It's interesting the way the sky uses all these colors. This is really where a lot of the detail is concentrated, so I'm gonna spend some time here. Just sampling the colors that are there and bringing those in, kind of blending them into the colors that are there. Now there's some clouds in the foreground. I'm gonna go ahead and just make all my cloud layers and my sun go down to a single layer. Don't need that stuff to be separate anymore. It'll just be easier to work with because I was trying to paint in something here and it wasn't working, and that's because it was on a different layer. Making nice, quick, easy work out of these clouds. So now I want to go kind of tweak my sky a bit. Now, I should have done this actually before I merged those layers, but that's okay. what I want to do is I just want to add some more warmth to the edge here. But it needs to be the right color. So let's see what we have here. So there's kind of a glow coming from behind the clouds. I wonder if that's perhaps not the way I want to do it. Do the airbrush. That's better. I'm only going to be able to get so much strength out of that orange since it's desaturated, so I'll have to go kind of into that yellowish orange. But just creating kind of a contrast between that blue from the cloud and the orange from the sky. Again, this is something I should have done before I merged those layers, but you know, you do things and you just gotta kind of go with it. So let's get our saturated yellow color there. Again, we're just trying to have that stuff just kind of fade out. We get that pale yellow. We'll just glow the sky here. I think we need some more clouds and stuff that are coming in front of that. Starting to come together. So it can be helpful to zoom out on your piece and just kind of see where it's at. Now I notice there's a lot more orange going on, but there are brighter oranges in the range of colors here that I don't have present here. So what I could do is I could have some more magentas that would brighten things up a bit, but I'm gonna keep the peach transition that's in a sense kind of replacing the orange more subtle. So when the piece comes together, it'll all be cohesive. Another consideration when we're talking about the colors and how they match up with the photo, monitor that I'm drawing on is a Cintiq, which actually has the most accurate color of all my displays. I think it's about 97% Adobe RGB. And the monitor that I'm using to view my reference photo, which it isn't this reference photo, it's one that I have that's bigger, is on my HD TV, which has the least accurate color. So these oranges are overhyped, or I guess underhyped on the bigger screen. So on the bigger screen, I don't really see a whole lot of oranges, whereas if I look at it here, then I see them. So that's something to keep in mind too. So I'm not necessarily going for color here. I guess this is kind of pointless now if it doesn't match the colors of what I'm painting exactly, but gives you an idea of the composition. So hopefully that makes sense. If I could show you how it looks on the other screen, I would, but I can't. Okay, let's continue on. So I'm thinking that I'm gonna brighten the sky a bit. I feel like it's a bit too dark for my liking. Smoothing that transition out a little bit, and if I can get away with putting in just a hint of pink. Yeah. Let's consult our value scale too. We can see what we're doing here and smooth that out. Okay, I don't want to nitpick this guy too much here. I keep saying stuff like that and then I go ahead and do it anyways. Okay, I'm gonna have to make myself move on to another area here, or else I'm gonna be spending all day on these clouds. Okay, let's see what kind of trouble we can get into on the water here. Actually, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to this land close. That's a bit too perfect. So I want to mess that up. Do that with a blender. Now I'm going to get this horrible white fringe with this particular brush, but that's okay because we can change the composite method to gel cover. That'll help a little bit. We can set it to multiply. That makes it too dark, but we could play with the opacity, but that won't work either. So we're going to keep it at multiply, just so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to blend it. So I want to get rid of those really noticeable peaks. Then we'll turn it back to default, and we'll just sample our base color and then just fill it with that. May not get the exact color that you had before, but basically we're just painting over that blending a bit. Why didn't that work? Let's see. I had preserve transparency on. All right. Well, I'm gonna have to do that again then. There we go. So I want these to look like distant trees, just not like really sharp distant trees. There we go. Gel cover does the trick. Okay, let's do that with the land mid as well. Make sure preserve transparency is off. May as well zoom in here so you can see what I'm doing. May as well set it to gel cover. I'll show you just doing kind of that same zigzaggy, scrubby gesture. Richard said looks good from here. Thank you, Richard. While we're here this close, we'll use the airbrush on that layer just to lighten the bottom of it a bit. Gives a little contrast that sets it apart from the water and from the land that's in front of it. Could even go like this and just set some more of it back as well. Let's do it like this though. I'm going to chop off a piece of it, paste it on its own layer, make sure that's still set to gel cover. Maybe just transform it a bit and make sure that it's behind that land layer. Just trying to knock it back there behind that other layer. Blend that layer in front of it. May as well name this so we know what it is. It's Land BG. Okay, see, little subtle changes like that make a big difference. Now, on that land close, I got a little too happy with that blending there, so I'm going to just use the blur blender over that to set that back a bit. Don't want it to be too sharp. Same thing with the land mid, knock that back. The land background. Okay, so I think I said like an hour ago that we were going to work on the sea, so let's do that. So while I'm working on this, I'm going to do a quick giveaway of a free Streamloots pack. So first person to click that link can get the free pack. Who knows what you'll get? You might get a drawing request, you might get to interact with this painting. All you need is a Streamloots account. It doesn't cost you money or anything. It's just a fun thing we can do during this live stream. So I am going to have Preserve Transparency back on for the sea layer. I'm going to get my chalk. I'm going to go into my papers. There's a paper I really like here called Wood Grain. I'm going to do select layer content on that sea layer, hide the selection with Control-Shift-H and create a new layer. I'm going to call that Sea Dark. And I'm going to get just a darker version of this dark color in the water here. I want to rotate the angle of this so it's just going flat. This will give me this nice texture. This is like taking a piece of paper or something textured and rubbing it across your canvas, or putting it underneath your canvas and then rubbing hard media on top of it. And the scale's actually fairly large for where this is at. Be careful about which colors I choose as well too, because I want there to be that nice gradient. Make the scale bigger. Again, keep in mind kind of what the colors are that would be reflected. I'm focusing on the highlights right now, by the way. Okay, we can get that real bright yellow. Maybe just pink it up a little bit. So I meant for that to be dark stuff. I guess I did highlights, so let's just do CHL and C dark. So I'm going to invert that, and then I'm going to use darker color here. Kind of go in between some of that like that. But I think I'm going to back up a bit. I just want some little things in between some of the little waves or ripples. I don't want to cover them up, so I'm trying to be careful here about how I do this. We can do some of those by hand too if we need to. I need to make that color darker to be able to see it over here, because there's already some pretty dark stuff. Just adding a little bit of an edge there. So one thing I see that's kind of bothering me is I need to get a distortion brush here. The gaps between the trees are just too distinct. It's harming that illusion of distance, so just reblend over that again. Okay, I think we'll probably come back to the water since I got most of it kind of blocked in so that I can do some work on the other stuff. So I'm going to go to the beach now. I'm going to merge the grass down with the beach. So I'm going to do this kind of in a more of a messy style. So I want to create some cooler shadows here to put in. The light's coming from behind these logs, so they would have shadows cast from them. As I'm doing this, I'm just being kind of spontaneous, like this. Thinking about the direction that everything is flowing to. Richard says, looking over your shoulder, you can see the color difference. Well, let's talk about that for just a minute here. So this color difference is not only the difference in color on the Cintiq, but then that's getting translated to my camcorder, which is a different camera than I'm using for like these shots here. Like this is my good camera. This is my less good camera, I guess. But yeah, you're right. You can actually see it does look quite a bit different. If we go back and forth between here, sorry, my audio for whatever reason stops playing sometimes when I'm on this shoulder view. I must have not added it as a channel. Oh well, audio is going to go on and off randomly. Anyways, you can see the difference. So yeah, there's a lot of things to account for. But you know, that's good because it gives you kind of an average idea of what you're looking at. Do want some of those cooler greens in here. And if you want it to look more subdued and set back, you can just kind of desaturate it a bit. And again, all I'm doing is just kind of hunting around for these colors in my reference photo. Some of that reflected sky color. Add some life to my sand here. About where I might be able to work in a little hint of this magenta color at some point too. Maybe in the sand or something. Let's consult our value. So I did a little bit of wonkiness to our edges here on some of the clouds because I had airbrushed around some stuff when I should have painted behind it, but not a big deal. If our sky is lightest here, it gets lighter as it gets darker as it moves out from that point, and we're looking good. You might not know this unless you're a member on YouTube, but typically what I'm doing with these live streams is, since they're already being recorded, I have a higher quality version on my end that I'm recording, and so if something like this happens, then I just take the two pieces and splice them together and re-upload it. And that's available on YouTube for members. So let's see here. I lost my train of thought. I was working on the ground. Okay. So now let's do some, I don't want to forget about this brush. So I'm trying to think, do I want to use a brush? Richard, should I use a brush or should I hand paint it? What do you think? I like that, a brush. because I have like this thick grass blades I could use. Richard says by hand. Richard, you're killing me here. No, I'm kidding. I'll do it by hand. Okay, let's do it by hand. We're on the same track here. For some reason, I think the brush is not gonna. It's not gonna do the trick. So, the color we want is kind of a tan color like that, and even that might be too. Yeah, I'm gonna do more orange. So then I'm not gonna worry about exactly where it is in the reference image. But I'm just gonna put it in. So the size of your brush would be the size of the brush that you're putting in. And these are windswept too, so I want to keep that in mind. Now I want this to be overlapping some of those background logs a bit too. This is the kind of beach you'd see if you came to Washington. Everyone else says they want me to do it by hand too. Do it by hand. Now you guys are regretting it because it's going to be 40 minutes of me doing this. You guys are like, wait a minute. Nope. Use the brush, Aaron. Unless it's somehow soothing and relaxing for you to watch me draw 1 million grass blades. I kind of like it. It makes me feel like I'm painting. Sometimes when you use the brushes that do everything for you, you don't feel like you're painting anymore. You feel like you're just using effects. How about doing it with tinted orange? I could add some highlights to it. We'll see. Right now I'm gonna get it just kind of blocked in. That's the great thing, is these colors aren't necessarily set in stone. And there should be some that are in shadow. There should be some that get a little bit more of that peachy orange color from the sky. There should be some that reflect some of the other colors from the grass. So now that I have an idea of the scale of the stuff I want to use, so you can see those colors are working together really well. And this is a really, really desaturated color too, but it's reading as being a brighter orange, or brighter than, it feels brighter than it actually is, I guess. So I'll just need to decide how many of these little things I want to add. I have a habit of too evenly distributing things, so I always try to force myself to cluster things together more in some places and then have nothing in some areas. So like here, let's just have a bunch. There's just a whole mess of them over here. that's one too many. You'd also want to consider what the actual distribution ratio is. And in the reference photo, they are all pretty concentrated in one area. And there's some big open spaces. So maybe I'll respect that. Because there's usually like natural paths that animals and people will take. This brush does not want to be anything other than really big or really small. So let's say, ooh, will Corel Painter crash? It's seizing up. It's almost a crash. I'm going to respect that, and I'm going to have... I kind of like that one, though. I'm going to have less there in that one spot. Here, I used a similar orange to animate lava earlier. All right, now I need some little rocks and things. So should I do the rocks with a rock brush or should I do them by hand? I think I know the answer to this. I'm gonna do this. I think it's time to bust out the thick paint. So I'm going to find the right value of color here. And I'm actually going to put some of that down on my little palette here. And then I'm going to get a lighter color. Maybe something like that, and I will put that down as well. Have them kind of mixed together a bit. Now I can paint with multiple colors here. And if this stuff is too strong, you can always reduce the opacity of it a bit. I could even just do individual little rocks like this. Guess I'm kind of going in between doing it by hand and using a brush here. But you know, this, you can load multiple colors on a real traditional brush. Have that still be considered painting. It's going to be a big rock there, but I don't want one to be like that, so Cancel that. It's up to you how much detail you want to add here. I can have some rocks that are kind of on the darker side too. I'm going to do another thick paint layer. I'm just going to kind of lightly put down some textured stuff here. And I also probably should save this since it's been a while. Richard says that's looking good. Thank you, Richard. Shahab's got to go. See you later, Shahab. Thanks for tuning in. Okay. Like I'm going a little too bright with the grass. So I'm gonna have to tone that down a bit. Well, let's just kind of zoom out and see where we're at now. Okay, let's add some detail to the logs now. Might as well name these layers too. Rocks detail 1, rocks detail 2. As we'll check our value too and kind of see where we're at. Sarah's here. Good to see you, Sarah. Thanks for joining. Log shadows seem too strong for that late in the day. Could be right. Yeah, in the reference photo, they're a little more subtle. Well, Let's see what we can do about that. So we can sample this color. Now it looks like I'm painting in black and white here. Whoops, I'm painting on the logs layer. Oh well. It looks like I'm painting in black and white, but I'm actually painting in color. What do you think? Is that better? And if we add some detail to the logs, those will help kind of stand out a bit better. Richard says yes. Cool. Let's see, why is my color not showing up here? Oh, it's logs foreground, that's why. And this shadow should be actually green. And what I'm going to have to merge some layers together here. I'm reluctant to do that because of the brush, so I'm gonna wait. Use kind of a warmer brown there on these logs that are closer to the light. And then when you move away from the light, they can get cooler. Jacobus here, good to see you. Thank you. Blur the edges of the shadows. Yeah, I think probably what I'll do is after I get all the different stuff locked in here, I'll probably go through and blend it. But I want to wait till I don't want to do what I did with the sky and merge it too soon, just in case I want to go in between some of this stuff, like with the grass. I'm trying to be a little bit more careful than I am sometimes. a little rock thing there. And okay, so let's see the brush. Add a little bit of that orange to the grass there, as Shahab suggested. And some of these will be cooler. Trying to find the right balance there. Adding a bit more contrast here to help these stand out against their surroundings. Add more of these little rock details. So the beach kind of goes from bigger rocks, and then they break down into smaller and smaller rocks as you get near the beach. Let's see, I'm just kind of peppering in a lot of this stuff. I'm not trying to overthink it. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty good. Trying to find the right color for this here. Just kind of getting a little bit of shadow, a little bit of warmth at the same time. There we go. So I think those are all of the basic elements of this. Everything just needs a bit more detail now. I'm not going to include the camping stove and the park benches and signs and stuff. I feel like that clutters the landscape. I want it to look natural. So start merging some layers. Before I do that, I'll just save this. I can save again and just this time designate, just name this merged, or add a little thing to the end that says merged. That way I know it's the merged version, and that's where that happens. Sometimes I do make available the layered versions of my artwork, so you can check them out. Those are usually available on Patreon or on YouTube memberships. Richard says, I always learn so much from watching you work and following your thought process. I'm glad to hear that, Richard. You do an awesome job of applying what I teach. Gotta check out some of Richard's work. I don't know if you have a website or not. I'm guessing not, but I could be wrong. Maybe that's something to look into if you don't already have one. Then I could say, go to richardstalter.com. And then you'd say, well, Richard Stalter is a used car salesman in Dallas. And I'd be like, damn it. Okay, go to richardstalter.org. And he'd be like, sorry, I can't do that. He's a dentist. I got lucky. There's no Aaron Ruttons who bought up the website, but there are other Aaron Ruttons. There's a heart doctor. Every now and then I'll get an email that's like, those special parts for that heart pump didn't come in today. And I'm like, you got the wrong Aaron Rutten. That Aaron Rutten probably hates me. He's probably like getting all these emails about people's drawing tablets not working and like, you know, how to paint trees and stuff. He's like, what? Leave me alone. I'm a heart doctor. He's in the middle of trying to do surgery on somebody's heart, and Instagram is blowing up with people asking questions about stuff. Curious is learning while having a good time. Excellent. I like the mood this has. It's working for me. So do we want to take a little peek of the old over the shoulder view? You can see now even this looks hyped. Like what I actually see on my Cintiq doesn't at all look like this. So this is actually more saturated and darker than what I'm seeing. But it does make it appear closer to the reference image in this particular view. So something to keep in mind. May as well do like a full screen so we can all appreciate what's happened so far. So let's continue on. So I'll probably go till about 1. So I have 45 minutes left to get this whipped into shape. So on this land close layer, let me get a selection of that. Set the composite method to screen and use that peach color. Do something kind of like this. Maybe if I can get away with making that even darker. I'll do that right there where the sun is. Go to the sea layer. I want some kind of bright something right there too. Sprinkle in some stuff like that. I think over here I did a bit of a water line that I want to cool down. No, I guess it's not on the water line. It must be on the bottom edge of that. Trying to get rid of this line and I can't even find it. I think it's there. Oh well, I'll deal with it later. So this is a glow. At this point, I'm feeling like I need to zoom out. Let's flip our canvas too, just to kind of get a fresh perspective on it. Richard says that's some mighty fine hand-painted grass. Thank you, Richard. Kira says, even if I mostly just listen while working on my animations, listen to someone be productive in the background makes me motivated to work on stuff. That's good. So a lot of people do that. They like to have, rather than music, like somebody to listen to. That's an interesting way to look at it. I hadn't thought of like how that might inspire you or encourage you. Motivate's the word I want. Motivate you to be productive. Okay, so I'm going to be merging some layers down. Guess those don't need to be merged, but we want to do the rocks to the beach, the rock details to the beach, the logs. I'm going to see what happens if I do this. I think it's worth doing select layer content on the logs foreground and subtracting that from the brush. Oops. So then the brush can still stay on its own. And the logs can still be separate. So the beach now contains the shadows and the grass and all that stuff. So I can blend those shadow edges. And then anywhere where I've overdone it with stuff, I can just kind of knock that back. So if there's too many rocks in some places, they can get kind of smoothed out. If the grass is too strong, that can get smoothed out. But I don't want to kill all my detail. Yeah, it's starting to come together. And I can go back in with my palette knife and put in more detail there if I need to. I think I want to blend the sky a little bit too, using a smooth knife blender. Don't want to overdo it though, because I already did a lot of my blending automatically using that oily brush. Yeah, like right there, I'm accidentally overdoing it, so I gotta be careful. This works great to create intermediate colors so that you smooth out those transitions in color. Kind of pull some of these out in different directions too. Take a little stretch here. That's the thing about sitting and painting for so long. You start to get kind of uncomfortable. All right. Just kind of plotting what I'm going to do here. Working in some more of this orange here. Debating whether or not to use some of this rose color. It's getting created kind of naturally here, so I don't think I need to put in too much of it. Some little hints will look nice though. This kind of takes it out of reality a bit and makes it a little more unnatural. Just make sure it still makes sense in your value scheme as well. Add a tiny bit to the cloud. Subtle, but it's there. Okay, I'm going back to being nitpicky on the sky here. Gonna have to leave it alone. Save as again. Just trying to decide what it is I want to do to this now. I think I want this cloud to be more orange. Okay, happier with that cloud now. Just kind of looking around to see what I can do to this. Bringing out a few highlights on some of these things. Add some little things that look like little grass growing here. I'm not going to go too nuts with this detail though. Let's see what kind of special stuff we can do to this. Maybe we can add a little bit of thick paint on the logs. Let's use that wood grain. That color's a bit too light. That's okay, because we can back it down a bit. This might not even really be worth doing because it's so subtle, but I feel like doing it, so I will. Now on the beach layer, since that's merged with those other logs, I'll just have a special layer for that. Probably not even really worth doing on those logs, actually. They're so small. I have another log kind of coming in front of the other one there, so I can separate them a bit. Like that. A big branch kind of coming off of this one. Trying to add some very, very small fine details here so it doesn't look too flat and unrefined. So down here is where the edge of the water is going to be, so we can have that kind of catching some light. Guess I should do that stuff on its own layer. That would be smart. Oh well. And we don't have to put too much detail into it because it's so far away. Relatively far away. Those ones that are closer, I'll have just a little bit lighter. The sunlight kind of hitting some stuff over here. That's what that needed. Maybe a little bit of highlight from that. Gonna flip it again. Just take a look at it, try to decide how I feel about it. Might go stronger with some of the contrast. My logs look like they ended up getting a bit lighter anyways. So 59 versus 93 versus 61, so can afford to go a bit darker here. This feels better. Let's see. Looks better as far as the value goes. Fade in that shadow a bit more. Richard's got to go. Thanks for joining, Richard. I'll see you later. I think I'm getting near the end of this. I'm gonna warm it up a bit. Where it's nearest the sun there. Got a few little hints of stuff in here. Just for visual interest. Yeah. Let's just see what we can do to make it a bit more magical. Brighten up the sky a bit. Want to have lots of glowing stuff going on in here. Kira wants to know if I have a video on commissions. I have some videos about how to make money as an artist. I don't know if I have any specifically on commissions. But you might also check out my videos about self-promotion, because you can't expect people to find your work if you don't advertise. That's something that requires a few different skills. Like, take my content, for example. If I want to sell a course, which is, one of the things I do to make money, I could have the course on Gumroad, and some people might find it organically, or some people might find it by word of mouth, but that's because I've had stuff on Gumroad for a while, but let's say I started out from scratch. I would have to drive traffic to Gumroad, so you have to be able to drive traffic to your commission page. So one of the ways that I drive traffic to Gumroad is through my YouTube channel. So, I might do this entire live stream and no one will buy a course, but every now and then people do. Same thing with my YouTube videos, most of the videos I put up don't result in a sale, but some do, and it all adds up. There's lots of places you can advertise, but you don't want to just go on YouTube and just be a big walking promotion, sitting promotion. I guess you're not walking. You want to be able to provide value for people so that they understand why they should purchase your content. So you're not making tutorials, you're doing commissions, but you need to figure out where the traffic is for people to be able to see your commissions and then connect people to the commissions. So that might involve, doing some drawing tutorials or something that you can offer that's of value to people for free. And then once you've established yourself for free, then you can offer products that offer more value, paid products. It's kind of getting the cart in front of the horse, like you should be doing commissions if you have demand for commissions. Like if there's a lot of people that want you to do them, that comes after getting exposure. And so, even for me, like I don't advertise for commissions. I suppose if I did, I'd probably get more offers, but out of the blue, I don't get very many, and it's probably because I don't advertise, because I don't really do commissions. But the other things I do advertise for generally bring in revenue. So check out my playlist, How to Make Money as an Artist. That's got a bunch of different tips that I'm sure are applicable to making money in advertising your whatever it is you do. Okay, so let's wrap this piece up here. Got my little mental break there. Just kind of looking at the smaller version of the painting next to the reference image on my other monitor, and color-wise, it's feeling pretty good. I think here on the beach, we need a little bit more visual definition. Cairo says, what is Adobe Fresco? Adobe Fresco is a mobile digital painting app that debuted on the iOS and has since come over to Windows 10 computers, but only select Windows 10 computers like the Surface Go and Mobile Studio Pro. But according to Adobe, through the recently released Wacom One display tablet, which includes bundled software, Adobe says a 6-month trial of Adobe Fresco will be available in about 6 months, I guess maybe 5 months now. So that implies that it's going to work on the Wacom One, but because the Wacom One isn't an all-in-one computer, it's an external display, then that implies that in 6 months or 5 months or however long, Adobe Fresco might work on all Windows 10 computers, but I don't know that for a fact, and don't quote me on that, that's just my speculation. It's a pretty good digital painting application. I need to redo my top art applications and make it more current, but it would be up there in the top. I would say in many ways it would be either right above or right below Photoshop. It depends on how you look at it. It's got some solid brushes, solid blenders. It performs really, really well. I want to blend that stuff very, very lightly. The whole sky, in fact, should get blended a little bit. Kira says my revenue is non-existent. I don't reach a 4,000 watch time with animation. Yeah, I mean, animation's one of those really hard niches to get into, and I think, you got to think outside the box. I want to be an artist, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna just pick one thing and only do that. You have to be a little bit abstract sometimes. And so in my case, right now I'm showing you how to make art, and in the process I'm making art, right? So maybe that's kind of what you do on your channel. Sure, you make animations, but maybe you talk about animating or something that animators would want to know about. Not even just like a tutorial, but it could just be talking about, common problems or things like that. And that's what you do while you're animating. Or you could even do tutorials, if you wanted to do that. But you need some sort of content that you can create, preferably passively, so that you're doing it while you're working. Then you have content for your channel. It's stuff that promotes your other content. And I get that the commissions are meant to be a way to make money, but that on its own is a completely separate thing that has to be advertised in addition to your animations that you're doing. But if you're, if you think about it and you put some thought into it, and it'll take time, you'll find a way to tie everything together. Galen's here. Good to see you, Galen. How you doing? He's going to be AFK, but he's going to be hanging out listening to my sweet, sultry voice. I just got a new mixer, or got a mixer, because all I had was an audio interface, and that headset mic was ASS. So I took that thing off and going through the condenser mic now, through the mixer, and I'm liking it a lot better, except the mixer's freaking huge, man. So integrating that into my desk, it's like not really an art tool, so it kind of feels like it's taking up space that other things that are art related could be taking up, but that's where I'm at now. Dragos is here. Good to see you, Dragos. The thing, like going back to Kira's question about trying to monetize things, just to make it broad, you have to think about how big your audience is. People ask me when should I start a Patreon, and you got to think, what's 1 to 3% of my audience, and 3% is generous. What's 1% of my audience? That's how many people are going to buy a product or become a member. So, you need to build up a following without, trying to make money. Like, the money comes after you've built up the following. It's not the other way around. As it should be too, because when you get to that point of having to create content on a regular basis and, tech support and all the things that go with that, you have to find a way to make money. Otherwise, you can't be doing that. You have to go get a regular job. Then you can't create content. So it's tricky. But fortunately, the climate is kind of changing. I remember when Patreon first came out, people called it e-begging and like talked all kinds of smack on it. And we're like, no one's going to give anybody money for no reason at all. And it's like, no, that's not what it is. And now, top tier artists are using Patreon. So it's just one of those things where, in a sense, it's easy to monetize your work as an artist, but it's not like you can just set up a Patreon or just set up a web page that says I do commissions and you're going to make money and get commissions. Set up that Patreon, and if you don't do anything to it, you're going to make $0. If you set up your commission page and you don't promote it and you don't find ways to get people interested in your content, and you don't find a way to bring in that specific audience of people who want commissions, no one's going to buy commissions. So that's not meant to discourage you. It's meant to be encouraging and snap you out of whatever thought process you're in right now. And it means more work for you, but it means more reward if you're willing to put in that work. So I'm doing a lot of talking and very little painting here, and I think that's because I'm kind of getting to the point to where perhaps I'm getting done with this. Just kind of highlighting the edge behind these trees here gives it a nice effect. Kira does animation as a hobby next to full-time, but sometimes not enough to stay the boat afloat, even next to full-time job. I mean, that's how you have to do it, I spent a lot of my early art career feeling bummed out that I wasn't going from like being broke to like having success, but it's one of those things, if you keep sticking to it, eventually the success will come if you're willing to adapt and to work really hard. So it's a struggle for a while. That's just kind of how it is. And I had a regular job, and did art on the side, and eventually phased out the job and phased in the art, and was just something I just kept working at. I have a cloud come in front of all this stuff here. There we go. That's what it needed. Yeah, I'm coming in too hot with that color. All I want to do is just sharpen it there. All right, I don't want to nitpick this thing to death. Seems to be the direction I'm going now. Drago says, what do I think of the Cintiq 22 displays as far as being a good monitor? You know, the color's not like horrible on it. It's about what you would expect for like an average monitor. It's not going to be super accurate color, but I would say, do you do mostly print or do you do mostly web work? Because if you do mostly print, then color accuracy is important. So what you're drawing on your canvas, at least more or less, gets closer to matching what you print. But if you're only going to show your work on the web and only post it on the web, then a lot of people have just regular phone screens or computer monitors that wouldn't even be able to show super accurate color, even if your artwork was super accurate. So I think it's good enough. I mean, if you're doing work for clients and, you know, they want work to be like super professional and everything's accurate, then you probably want, at least even if you have to do your work on a non-accurate display, you can proof it on a monitor that's accurate. But again, that's more money you'd have to spend on a monitor. So yeah, that's questions like that are tricky. And you have to consider the percentage difference too. You know, if you're getting around 70 or so % Adobe RGB, then it's another 30%, which, you know, spread across all the different colors that are available in that spectrum, it isn't that drastic of a difference. It's not like the color is going to be super horrible and washed out. It's just not going to be quite as expanded. And you might also find that for that particular range of colors, a lot of the colors like greens are way overdone. There's so many different ranges of greens, and like, unless you're doing like radioactive glowing stuff where you want really bright greens, you're probably not going to use like super saturated greens to paint landscapes and stuff. So here, these greens I'm using, they appear kind of bright, you know, they're not like super vibrant, but they're very desaturated. If I take a green that's like fully saturated like this, and I put that in, look how out of place that is. So you might not be using a lot of the extra range that you get. So I don't know what else to do to this, and I actually look at the clock now and I think that I'm pretty much out of time. So I'm gonna just call this one good. So I'm gonna save my final copy. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoyed learning a lot while I paint this landscape. Feel free to subscribe to my channel, check out my Patreon and all that stuff. It supports the live streams that I do. I'll be back with you again, possibly next week around the same time, same day or so. I'll try to let people know as soon as I know when we're going to be doing another live stream. So thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you next time.